Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? This time, we're going to try to untangle the implications of Yahya Sinwar's death, really figure out what it means for the future of Hamas and the Israel-Palestine conflict. It's a complex situation. To say the least, Sinwar wasn't just any leader. He was the guy calling the shots, shaping Hamas's strategy for years. We need to remember his roots in the Palestinian and Islamic movement. Those ideologies were at the core of everything he did. So yeah, big implications here.
It really is remarkable. You know, the whole cloak and dagger element, the IDF operation that took him out, happened way back on October 17th. But it was only just recently confirmed with DNA testing. I mean, that's a level of secrecy you just don't see every day.
Straight out of a spy movie, right?
Yeah.
And the reactions, well, they've been coming in from everywhere. Even President Biden called it a good day for multiple countries. This is obviously a development with a global impact.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It sent shockwaves through the system. And I think one of the biggest things Sinwar's death does is create a massive power vacuum within Hamas. It's like, imagine a sudden leadership change at a major corporation. Everyone starts scrambling for position. There's uncertainty, instability. The potential for things to go very wrong is enormous.
So for those of you listening, think about it. Who's going to step into that void? What kind of Hamas are they going to lead? Are we going to see someone who feels like they have to prove themselves, maybe with even more aggressive tactics? Or could this, and maybe this is wishful thinking, could this open the door for a more moderate voice?
Those are the million-dollar questions, aren't they? And to really wrap our heads around it, we have to step back and look at the bigger picture. You know, Hamas isn't operating in a vacuum. They're part of this, what they call the axis of resistance, this network of groups, Hezbollah, others, with strong ties to Iran. They all have a common goal: opposing Western influence, challenging Israel. It's a complicated web. In Sinwar's death, it's like throwing a wrench into that whole system. Iran's going to have to reevaluate everything.
Yeah.
Very carefully.
Wait, so we're not just talking about two sides anymore. We're talking about this whole network, alliances all across the Middle East, all potentially changing because of this one event.
Exactly. It's like throwing a stone into a pond. You get these ripples, these consequences that spread outward, impact everything in their path. The potential is huge, and we're only just starting to see the first tremors. It's going to be fascinating.
I know.
And a little bit terrifying to see how this all plays out.
Okay, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed already, I'm not going to lie. And I bet you are too out there listening. But stay with us. We're about to try and break down some of these potential outcomes, figure out what they could mean for peace in the region. And this is where things get really interesting. What could this potential instability lead to?
One of the most immediate concerns, and it's a big one, is the potential for an escalation of violence. And I'm not just talking about Gaza. This could easily spill over into the West Bank, maybe even beyond. You've got these factions within Hamas all vying for power. They're going to want to prove their strength, and that often means aggression.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
One of the reports I read highlighted this. It talked about how these groups aligned with Hamas, they might use violence as a way to, flex their muscles in this new landscape, like a competition to establish dominance. And then, of course, Israel might have to increase their military presence to prevent things from getting out of control.
Exactly. It's that classic security dilemma. One side tries to feel more secure, and it ends up making the other side feel less secure. You get this spiral of escalation, and when you zoom out, look at the big picture, this whole situation. It just shows how fragile peace in the region really is. Think back to the recent escalation, the rocket fire, the airstrikes. It doesn't take much for things to unravel.
Yeah. It's scary to think about.
Yeah.
It really does feel like we're teetering on the edge of something. And the immediate future isn't the only thing we need to be worried about.
Right. Exactly. This isn't just a short-term crisis. This power struggle within Hamas, it could have consequences that last for years. Cast a shadow over any chance for peace.
So you're saying this internal struggle,
Yeah.
it could actually make peace even harder to achieve.
It's definitely a possibility. Think about it. You have all these factions within Hamas fighting for control. It could lead to even more instability, more violence, and that makes everyone dig in, become more extreme in their positions.
And the violence, it might not just be directed at Israel.
Exactly. We could see infighting clashes between different Palestinian groups. It's happened before. And it's a real risk here. It raises a big question, a crucial one. What does all of this mean for the possibility of a peace agreement? You know, something that already felt so distant, so unlikely. It's a question we can't ignore. The stakes are just too high.
So where do we go from here? It feels like we've opened this Pandora's box and we have no idea what's going to come out. It's a lot.
I understand that feeling. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, but that's why it's so important to understand the context, the history, the key players, the things that could could set off a wider conflict. It's like having a map and compass when you're in a dense forest. It helps you find your way.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. So for our listeners, a person who's trying to make sense of all of this, what should they be watching for in the coming weeks, months? What are the key things to pay attention to?
Well, I'd say a few things. First, watch who emerges as the new leader of Hamas. What's their background? What are their views? Hardliner, pragmatist. What do they say they want to achieve? Those answers, they're going to give us some clues about where they might take the organization.
It's like trying to predict what a company is going to do based on who they appoint as CEO, their leadership style, their priorities. It affects everything.
Exactly. Second, pay close attention to Iran. How do they respond? Do they increase their support for Hamas, maybe even try to influence who becomes the new leader? Or do they back away, distance themselves, feel like things are getting too risky? And what about the other countries in the region? How do their alliances shift? It's like this giant game of chess. All the pieces are moving.
And everyone's trying to figure out what the next move will be, weighing the risks. But in all of this political maneuvering, it's easy to forget something important.
You're right. We can get caught up in the strategy, the geopolitics, and we lose sight of the human cost, the people on both sides whose lives are being shattered by the violence, the instability.
It's true. We focus on the big picture, and we forget about the individuals, their stories, their struggles, their hopes. That's why finding a peaceful solution is so important.
Absolutely. Those are the voices that often get lost. So as you're following this, I would encourage you, seek out those perspectives. Try to understand the impact this is having on real people on a deeper level.
Okay, that's a lot. And I'm sure our listener is feeling the weight of all of this. It's heavy stuff. These are complicated issues, and there are no easy answers.
You're right. It's natural to feel overwhelmed, maybe even a little hopeless when you're faced with problems like these. But I think it's in those moments that we need to remind ourselves. Knowledge is power. Understanding matters. The more we know, the better we can engage in meaningful conversations. Advocate for change. Work towards a more peaceful future, even if it feels impossible.
I love that. Hope through understanding. It's a good way to think about it.
It is something we can all hold on to as we try to make sense of the world, find our own way forward.
Yeah, it's a lot. It really is. But as we wrap up our deep dive here, into the whole Yahya Sinwar situation, I think it's important to remember this isn't just something happening over there.
Yeah.
It's all connected to global politics, the world stage, everything.
Exactly. Sinwar's death, it's not the end. It's more like the beginning, the curtain rising on a whole new act full of uncertainty. And I think for everyone listening, the big takeaway here is Sinwar's death. It's a catalyst. Things are going to change. People are going to have to reevaluate their strategies, their alliances, everything they thought they knew.
So what does that actually look like? What should we be watching for as this new act unfolds?
Keep your eyes on Hamas. That's the first thing. How do they reorganize? Who steps into that leadership role? And what path do they choose? Do they follow Sinwar's lead, the hardline approach? Or do we see something different? Maybe a more pragmatic leader, someone open to dialogue. It's hard to say.
And how does this all play into the bigger picture, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Could this lead to more violence? Or, and I know this is a long shot, could it open up some kind of unexpected path to peace talks?
Those are the questions we're all asking, and the answer is, well, they're not clear, but the stakes, they couldn't be higher. This could escalate, draw in other countries, global powers. This isn't just about Hamas and Israel anymore. It's about the whole region, the Middle East. And what happens there, it affects the world.
Wow. This has been really eye-opening. I feel like I have a much better grasp of how complicated this all is, the potential consequences.
That's what we're here for, to give you the tools, the knowledge, to understand this complex world we live in.
Well said. So to everyone listening out there, thanks for joining us on this journey. We've only scratched the surface, but hopefully this has made you curious to learn more, to keep digging.
Remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand, the better equipped we are to ask the right questions, challenge assumptions, and work towards a better future.
Couldn't agree more. That's all for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and remember, hope through understanding. That's what the deep dive is all about.